Hello, this is Mr. Huff, and we need to talk about writing a design brief. So, the design brief is basically a document or some paragraphs and a list of things that help us identify the problem to be solved, what the criteria are, how we know if the problem is solved or not, and any constraints we need to apply to the problem. So, I think the most helpful thing in this part of this presentation in PLTW is the design brief components. So an easy way to write a design brief is you add all of these headings and then just fill them out. So the first thing you need to do is the client. Who are you solving this problem for? It's usually a person, a company, an organization or a group. These can also be considered stakeholders. Who's interested in you solving this problem? Another thing you need to think about is the target consumer. So you have the people that are going to be building it and the people who will be using it. Those are often very different. They usually have different needs. Also, the designer is going to be you or your team. The problem statement, which we'll talk more about, is a clear, concise identification and description of the design problem or opportunity. There are some questions you have to ask and answer in your problem statement, and this will turn into your elevator speech. And we talked about what an elevator speech is. It's about a 20-second explanation of what you're trying to achieve with your design. Then you have the design statement, and this is a really wordy statement. It says, it's a statement that describes the anticipated design effort to address the needs of the stakeholders and the problem statement. So really, another way to say this, the design statement explains what you're going to do. We are going to design and build a prototype that solves this problem, okay? Also, notice how in this statement, it's not implying any kind of solutions about how the problem will be solved. Is spending its time defining what the problem is and what you're going to do to solve it. The criteria are a list of needs and design requirements that describe what the design solution must do to meet the needs of the stakeholder. That's exactly what it says. So these are the things you can look at to see if your solution is going to solve the problem or not. The constraints, these are things like how much time do you need? How many people can you have working on it? How much money can you spend? What materials do you have available to you? Another thing you need to consider, codes. This means safety codes usually, or building codes. Like you can't just go out and throw a structure up that's dangerous. You can't build a bridge unless it meets safety codes because you don't want it falling down and hurting people. So these are the kinds of things and there's also physical attributes like size and weight and color. So the constraints, what are some of the limitations you have to apply? And you can think about the things we've already done, like the paper bridges and the challenges that I've given you guys where you had limited sets of material and limited amounts of time and limited number of people working on it and what you had to do in that amount of time. So think about those kinds of constraints. All right, so that's what is in a design brief. And then they have this lame example. They have this example in here about a child's toy, and it has things like it has to have numbers on it, and it has other things like, oh, it has to have this little grab bar, and it has to have an alphabet wheel right here. And so these are some of the criteria that this product needs. So I'm not going to go into this. Really, what I want to go down to is look at this. They have an example problem or design brief here. They have the client, the target consumer. You would put your name here as the designer, and this is the problem statement. It's actually pretty tough to write one of these well. So let's look at what they gave us here. So it says, most parents expect their children to be able to walk, talk, sing, and count, and recite the alphabet before they enter elementary school. A growing expectation is that infants and toddlers will develop cognitive abilities and fine motor skills during the first 3 years of life. So we're answering the major questions here. We're going to dig into that a little bit. And then you have a design statement. So this is what they're going to do. It's like the to-do list, right? So they're going to design it, they're going to market it, they're going to test it, they're going to mass produce a multifunction educational toy that is an infant activity center and a toddler walking aid. That is their design statement. And then you have your criteria and constraints. So these are some of the criteria and the constraints here. So it's usually a list that's easy to absorb, okay? And then it talks about problem statements, and we have two examples. So this is a bad problem statement. Lots of people go fishing for redfish and don't catch anything. There aren't as many redfish as there used to be. While that does describe a problem, it's not enough details to build an engineering problem statement around. So let's look at this example down here. You need to answer these questions. Who is it a problem for? What is the problem? Where is it happening? When did it happen? How many? How is it a problem? Okay, so who, what, when, where, and how. 4 W's, 1 H. So this is a better problem statement. Game fishermen who fished in the lower Laguna Madre of Texas in 2002 through 2007 reported a decrease of 20% in red drum, and it gives the scientific name. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce that. This loss can be attributed to premature death due to mouth infections caused when undersized fish are caught and released. So there we have a solid problem statement. It answers the who, what, when, where, and how of the problem. Does it imply a solution at all? No, it just identifies the problem. So here are the characteristics of an excellent problem statement. It is concise. It's short, sweet, and to the point. It leaves room for multiple solution. It doesn't tell you how you're going to solve the problem. It says, this is the problem, and it doesn't tell you how to solve it. It's specific enough to be solvable in a given time frame with available resources, and it answers those questions. So those are the important parts of a design brief. Okay? The hardest part is writing that problem statement. All right, that's enough for this.